Regulating AI is increasingly being discussed on Capitol Hill. In May, a group of bipartisan lawmakers released a roadmap for congressional action on AI. That roadmap calls for $30 billion to be invested in the benefits of AI, but little has actually been accomplished. Meanwhile, OpenAI is going through its own issues. Former and current employees signed an open letter this week calling for whistleblower protections, which are especially important given the speed of AI's evolution. The letter warns the company and its rivals are building intelligence without sufficient oversight and are trying to keep employees quiet about the risks.
Part of the letter reads, quote, "These risks range from the further entrenchment of existing inequalities to manipulation and misinformation to the loss of control of autonomous AI systems potentially resulting in human extinction. So long as there are no effective government oversight of these corporations, current and former employees are among the few people who can hold them accountable." In response to the letter, OpenAI told Rising they do believe there should be government regulation and said, quote, "We're proud of our track record providing the most capable and safest AI systems and believe in our scientific approach to addressing risk. And we agree that rigorous debate is crucial given the significance of this technology and will continue to engage with governments, civil society, and other communities around the world." Joining us now to discuss it all is the founder of AI nonprofit Captrs, Phil Siegel. Phil, welcome. So tell me a little bit about where you fall on the matter of Congress and its readiness to discuss AI. I personally am dreading the potential of a October or a summer debate with Donald Trump and Joe Biden debating AI. This doesn't seem like something they're ready to discuss. Is Washington itself ready?
I think they're ready to do some small steps, but they're not ready, for the wider challenge, and that's okay. We need to start with smaller steps. The problem is this is the classic example of good being, or perfect being the enemy of good. There's absolutely some steps we can take. We know what some of those are, but the plan that Congress put out, while laudable, had several dozen, if not hundreds, of things that they wanted to do. And the problem is we're never going to do hundreds of things. We need to pick the 3 or 4 things that are the most important and get started.
And so, Phil, obviously the clear question then is, what are those things? What are the things that we should be focused on? Because anytime there's this huge new technology or technological shift, there's a natural tendency, I think, toward alarmism sometimes, but there are also obviously actual risks that need to be discussed. So what should we be focusing on in your view?
Yeah, that's the exact right question. There's really kind of 4 areas, I think, that we can make very quick progress. Number one is protecting children and the elderly, like we are at least starting to do with social media. The second is making sure that these algorithms don't have built-in biases, and we've seen several examples of those types of biases and what they can mean and the type of inaccurate and damaging information that they give. The third is to make sure that our laws are set up, our code is set up to react to different types of things that AI can do. And then the fourth, and maybe the most important, is to hold the model and infrastructure people accountable for who they sell their tools to. We have an example of that in the banking system called Know Your Customer. We need to make sure that they are going through the same type of processes and vetting the people that they sell their tools and infrastructure to.
Phil, I absolutely agree with you about the Know Your Customer proposition when it comes to doling out bank loans, financing, all sorts of things that really deserve the human element rather than AI mediating those kinds of big moments for people, like home ownership, opening a business. But the first pillar that you sort of lay out, that children should not have access to AI tools before high school, that seems to me to be a little bit dramatic. I mean, I'm immediately thinking about photo generation and AI-driven tools for graphic design on Canva. And you're telling me a middle schooler can't participate with or use those tools?
No, what I'm saying is that they can't sell them to children. The parents are always able to figure out what tools and types of things that they want. I don't believe that we should have companies like OpenAI and so forth selling directly to children. And as far as the know your customer, that really wouldn't hold for specific consumer type of applications. These are selling to businesses and making sure that businesses and the unknown actors are not receiving these tools. But your point is exactly right. We want to have kids be able to use some of these tools, but it needs to be with the approval and especially with young children, their parents or guardians helping them learn these tools.
Right, and I'm glad to hear you clarify that. It's in your Newsweek piece, you say access to tools. And so that seems to me to be a little bit of a different guiding principle than selling directly to kids, because we deal with all sorts of problems with young people being marketed to, using their parents' credit cards for all sorts of weird products and video games. But as long as we're talking about kids can still access AI-driven tools that are really powerful, particularly in the creative space, that seems to be a good place to start.
Phil, I just want to move to another topic that you mentioned there, which is the algorithm issue. You noted about the propensity for there to be biases or prejudices is perhaps too strong a word, but the algorithms to lean in certain ways. And I think that this is interesting because discussing these topics can always be challenging because people's knowledge of exactly what is going on varies a lot. What kind of dangers are we talking about when we're suggesting that the algorithm itself can be either set up to have biases or whatever?
Yeah, it's really kind of two areas. Number one is areas that we've already legislated bias out of the system where AI could put it back in, and that would be things like getting loans, employment decisions, healthcare access, and so forth. So things that society has already decided we want to make sure that there aren't biases in access. The algorithms are harder to control and could reintroduce those back in. And then we've also had situations where the algorithms are providing just flat out, bad advice, like adding glue to keep your cheese on your pizza or whatever that was. It's the responsibility of the algorithm makers to make sure that they're not providing dangerous, biased information to their consumers, as well as not providing biased tools to their business customers to have them, again, discriminate, whether it be in loans or employment or those types of situations.
Phil, do you get the impression that a lot of the AI, programmers and innovators that are signing letters like this want the United States to go the way of Europe and adopt the, so-called precautionary principle when it comes to development of AI and other technologies? Because I would be a little bit worried about that if the United States was sort of adopting a European mindset when it comes to innovation. Running quickly and breaking things along the way is kind of what we do here.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The European rules, while I understand what they're trying to accomplish, go way too far for the implementation and the technology to develop. They've done that before in terms of consumer marketing and even some tools with social media. But that's what they do to kind of set maybe the bar in the other direction. We often set the bar too far in the direction of innovation versus oversight. I'm hoping that some of the meetings that we're having with the European regulators bring both of us back more towards the balance that needs to be, which is some regulation, but not over-regulation so that the technology development is stifled.
And how are you finding the political reception to those arguments, Phil? I mean, I guess the standard template in our politics is that, broadly speaking, Democrats tend to be more favourable toward regulation and Republicans more hostile. Are you seeing bipartisan support for regulation? Is it a politically vexing issue? How's that working out?
Well, it's hard to say because it seems like when something happens, that either annoys people or they find offensive, this comes back into the news cycle, and everybody talks about how we need to introduce something to correct the problem. And then something else happens to distract our gaze, and it gets out of the news cycle, and they move on to something else. I think current course and speed, it's hard to imagine we're going to do anything in 2024. But what Congress needs to do is get this back on the agenda after the election and move quickly to get some, as I put it, quick wins in the bank to make sure that the technology doesn't run amok and doesn't introduce biases and doesn't get sold to bad actors that are going to do bad things with it, and that but that we also drive towards the innovation that can allow this technology to be the great thing that it can be for our economy.
Sure. Phil, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a great conversation. I'm sure we'll talk more about it in the future, but Phil Siegel, thanks so much. And more rising to come after this.